Prologue. Sarah had always been cautious of the basement in her childhood home. Her parents used it for storage, but she was forbidden from going down there. She grew up hearing faint sounds coming from the basement, but her parents always dismissed them as old house noises. When she turned 24, Sarah's parents passed away, leaving her the house. In need of space, she decided to clean out the basement. Little did she know that uncovering the secrets buried below would change her life forever. The story. The day Sarah finally opened the door to the basement, a rush of cold air greeted her. The smell of mold and something else, something darker, filled her nostrils. Grabbing a flashlight, she hesitated for a moment before descending the creaky wooden stairs. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, broken toys, and dusty boxes. But one thing stood out to her immediately, a large, wooden wardrobe in the far corner, untouched by time. It looked too old, older than the rest of the belongings, and she didn't remember her parents ever mentioning it. Curiosity got the better of her, and Sarah approached the wardrobe. She pulled open the heavy doors, only to find nothing. It was completely empty, save for a faint smell of rot. Disappointed but relieved, she began to clean the rest of the basement. But as she moved things around, strange things began to happen. The lights flickered, the air grew colder, and the feeling of being watched intensified. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. In the silence of the house, she could hear faint footsteps coming from the basement. It was impossible, no one else was home. The next morning, she decided to investigate again, but this time, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Behind the wardrobe, the wall looked uneven, as if something was hidden behind it. With some effort, Sarah moved the wardrobe, revealing a small door, barely noticeable. Her heart raced as she opened it, revealing a narrow passage leading to a hidden room. Inside the room, she found old, decaying furniture and strange symbols drawn on the walls. But the most disturbing part was the pile of bones in the corner, human bones. Panicked, Sarah backed away, but before she could leave, the door to the hidden room slammed shut. She screamed, pounding on the door, but no one could hear her. Then, she felt it, a cold, invisible hand on her shoulder. Sarah was never seen again. When authorities finally searched the basement, they found the hidden room, but it was empty, save for a few old bones. The wardrobe had disappeared, and to this day, the house remains abandoned, haunted by the unseen presence that claimed Sarah. Prologue. Josh had always been a skeptic when it came to the supernatural. He didn't believe in ghosts or spirits and certainly not in haunted basements. That all changed when he moved into a new apartment in the city. The rent was cheap, and the location was perfect, but there was one catch: the basement. The landlord warned him never to go down there at night. It was a strange rule, but Josh shrugged it off, figuring it was just an old superstition. The story. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. Josh lived his life as usual, barely paying any attention to the basement. But one night, after a long day at work, he decided to do some laundry. He forgot about the landlord's warning and headed down to the basement, his laundry basket in hand. The basement was darker than he remembered, and the air felt thick, almost oppressive. He quickly loaded the washing machine, eager to get back upstairs. As he turned to leave, he heard it, a faint whisper. Josh froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned around, but there was no one there. Dismissing it as his imagination, he continued up the stairs. But the whisper came again, this time louder, clearer. It wasn't his imagination, someone was down there. Against his better judgment, Josh turned back and slowly descended the stairs. The whispering grew louder, more frantic, as if someone was calling out to him. His flashlight flickered, and that's when he saw them, shadows moving on the walls, but there was no one casting them. Terrified, Josh tried to run, but the basement door slammed shut, trapping him inside. The shadows grew closer, circling him, their whispers filling his ears. He couldn't make out what they were saying, but their tone was angry, vengeful. The lights went out completely, and Josh felt cold hands grabbing at him, pulling him deeper into the basement. He screamed, but no one could hear him. When the landlord finally found him the next morning, Josh was huddled in the corner, muttering to himself, his eyes wide with terror. He never spoke about what happened that night, but he moved out of the apartment the next day. The basement was sealed off, and no one has entered it since. But those who live in the building still hear the whispers at night, coming from the locked basement door. Prologue. Lily was a single mother, struggling to make ends meet. When she found a cheap rental house on the outskirts of town, it seemed like a blessing. The house was old, but it had character, and there was plenty of space for her and her daughter, Emma. The basement, however, gave her an uneasy feeling. There was something about it that felt wrong, but she chalked it up to nerves. It wasn't until Emma started talking about the boy in the basement that Lily realized something was very, very wrong. The story. At first, Lily thought Emma was just imagining things. She was only 6, after all, and kids had active imaginations. But Emma's stories became more detailed, more disturbing. She said the boy was lonely, that he lived in the basement and wanted to come upstairs. Lily brushed it off, telling Emma that there was no boy in the basement. But then strange things started happening. Lily would find toys moved around, lights flickering, and cold spots in the house. One night, she heard Emma talking to someone, but when she checked on her, she was alone in her room. When Lily asked who she was talking to, Emma replied, "The boy in the basement. He says he's trapped." Lily's blood ran cold. Determined to prove it was just Emma's imagination, she decided to investigate the basement. Armed with a flashlight, she went down, feeling the air grow colder with each step. The basement was empty, just like always, but as she turned to leave, she saw it, a small, child-sized handprint on the dusty window. It wasn't Emma's, and it definitely wasn't hers. Terrified, Lily ran back upstairs, but Emma's voice stopped her in her tracks. "He says he's coming," Emma whispered, staring blankly at the basement door. The next morning, Lily called a priest to bless the house, but it was too late. That night, the basement door creaked open on its own, and the temperature in the house dropped to freezing. Emma woke up screaming, saying the boy was in her room, standing at the foot of her bed. Lily rushed in, but there was no one there, just an icy cold spot where Emma had pointed. They moved out the next day, leaving everything behind. Lily never found out who the boy in the basement was, but after they left, she heard that a child had gone missing in that house years ago, his body never found. The basement remains locked, but people in the neighborhood still talk about the strange noises that come from the house at night, and the boy who never left. These stories remind us that sometimes the things we fear are more real than we imagine. Basements are often the places we store the things we'd rather forget, but sometimes, what we've forgotten refuses to stay hidden. The moral is clear: be cautious of what you uncover, for some secrets are better left buried.